or as an ordinary citizen, I don't know what goes into the decision to increase or decrease fuel, right? But anything that affects my spending, that increases my spending, I have a problem with it. Personally, maybe, or people like me, no matter what the increases are, we are able to purchase the fuel. But what about the masses? We have people in this country that even if a fare is increased by a peso, they find it difficult to pay. So if the government can do something about the price increment, at least delay some of it, or even do away with the increments, like it will be better for us all.
As for the increase of the fuel, as I'm talking now, it has worried me from day one, and it is worrying me from now. It is worrying me because at first I was buying 60 cedis. I use the 60 cedis and close work back. As for now, I'm buying 1.5, which is 150 cedis. Mommy, no, it's not easy. I just want to stop the taxi work and just find some company. As for company where I'm not buying any fuel, so it won't cost me much. So as for a taxi there, because of the fuel, I just want to stop.
It's affected me heavily because I run a fleet of vehicles. And those prices, the price going up day in, day out, it's really, really affecting us. We cannot kind of emphasize the need for the government to come in and subsidize on that, because currently all our vehicles are packed. When the price of fuel goes up, it means that every single thing in the value chain would have to go up.
The increment in fuel, it's not good. It's not good at all. Because just last week, fuel was 60, 80 pesos, and just this week, 60, 90 pesos. We don't know, maybe by the end of this year, fuel might reach 80 or so, I don't know. And we, the motorists, we are suffering. Because every day increment, we can't even work in peace.
Oh, I could say before I used to buy 200 cedis for a week. For now, I'm buying 350 for a week. Even 3 days, I have to buy another fuel again. Without AC, I need to, even 200 cedis won't even reach to a week. So now I buy more than 100% than before I used to.
Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe and click on that bell icon and get notified every time we share something new. You know we always share something new. Stay consistent.
Indicating how they're going to sell the various products to the oil marketing companies for the next 2 weeks. If you look at the numbers, diesel is expected to go down by some 1% per litre. However, petrol and LPG are expected to be increased. LPG, on the other hand, should go up by more than 1% per kilogram. However, some of the major oil marketing companies have indicated that they will absorb the expected increase. This will be the third time since last month that prices should have gone up by under 1%, but these firms absorbed it. But some of them say this will depend on the actions of market leader Guo. But there are some who have also raised sustainability issues and whether this practice to absorb prices is a good move, because this could open the door for huge hikes in the future. However, some have also argued that the city's stability over the past months might have aided this move. Therefore, the current pressure on the Ghana city, maybe consumers, should brace themselves for some huge hikes in the coming months. There are currently more than 100 oil marketing companies in the country, but often developments are mainly influenced by the top 6 firms in the industry.
80 cedis and 200 cedis. At the end of the day, the car owners also demand their share, which is between 130 to 150 cedis. At the end of the day, how much profit do we get?
Bibia wo be kosro mam atenga na de say ezi akufuado papa say enipa nya de o ma we akufuado wo patro no ntobi.
Everything is expensive in this country. What do our leaders want us to do? They don't even buy fuel. I use all my profit for fuel.
Currencies, including the US dollar. However, the constant factor, which are the taxes, levies, and margins, or markups on the price build-up remains a contributing factor in constant determination of the price of petroleum products. The taxes, levies, and margins on the price build-up currently sum up to 2 cedi, 43 Ghana cedis per liter of petrol, and 2 cedi, 41 Ghana cedis per liter of diesel. The soaring and surging in the price of petroleum products do not affect these taxes, levies, and margins, making them a constant burden on the commercial transport operator. Now, the effects of the increments in pricing on transport operations. The recent increment in fuel prices does not correspond to the increment in transport fares. Although prices have been increased by 39.39 between January and November, transport fares have only been increased by 30%, and that took effect in June 2021. These surges in fuel prices do not promote the income and welfare of personnel. Commercial transport operators are the major consumers of petroleum products, and for that matter, contributes more on the clearance of the legacy debts in the energy sector through the Energy Sector Levy Act 2015 Act 899 and the Energy Sector Levy Act 2021 Act 1064. For further information on this average, a commercial taxi driver uses about 5 gallons of petrol a day, thereby spending an additional 54.68 per day, Ghana cedis per day, while the truck driver uses an average of 10 gallons of diesel a day, spending an additional income of 108.45 Ghana cedis per day, and the taxes and levies. These increments have reduced our real daily income because we need to add more money to buy the same quantity of fuel for our daily works. Now, removal of taxes and the margins. Therefore, we call on government to scrap the taxes, levies, and margins on the price build-up. We make this appeal because the commercial transport operator and vehicle user in general cannot continue to pay for debt caused by government appointees in the energy sector again. We can't continue to sustain and then subsidize on premise fuel for the fisheries subsector of the economy, since the continuous subsidization of premise fuel has not stopped the importation of fish products into the country. Lastly, crude oil prices are surging on the international market, implying that government is making excess revenue on petroleum receipts, and for that matter, the petroleum and commercial transport operating needed to be cushioned. Briefly, we call on government to scrap totally the price stabilization and recovery levy of the 16 pesewa per liter per gallon per petrol, and then the 14 pesewa per liter per diesel. The special petroleum tax, which is 46 per liter on either diesel or petrol. The energy sector levy recovery levy of 20 cedi per liter on either petrol or diesel, and the sanitation and politicization levy, which is 10 pesos per liter on either diesel or petrol. And lastly, the scrap of the energy debt recovery levy of 28 pesos on either diesel or petrol, since the arrears of the legacy debt owed to the bulk distribution companies have been cleared. Now, on the action column, we have this to tell the press. Our call for the government to scrap up and reduce taxes on the petroleum price build-up has been received, but without response. However, we further press on government to remove and scrap all the taxes or the margins on fuel price build-up as a matter of urgency.
Just gone by is a
recovery levy of 20 cedi per litre on either petrol or diesel, and the sanitation and politicization levy, which is 10 pesos per litre on either diesel or petrol. And lastly, the scrap of the energy debt recovery levy of 28 pesos on either diesel or petrol, since the arrears of the legacy debt owed to the bulk distribution companies have been cleared. Now, on the action column, we have this to tell the press. Our call for the government to scrap off and reduce taxes on the petroleum price buildup has been received, but without response. However, we further press on government to remove and scrap all the taxes or the margins on fuel price buildup as a matter of urgency.
just gone by is a press conference by
Fifteen minutes after 7. Thank you very much. Good evening. This is Decision Point on Love 99.5. My name is Nana Jantuah. So tonight we talk about the concern over increased taxes and how we can refocus our economy from taxation to industrialization. Look, no economy can thrive without taxes. And why do we have taxes? We have taxes, and the simple answer, some will say, is until someone comes out with a better idea, definitely taxation will be the only practical means of raising revenue to finance government spending on the goods and services that most of us demand. Because every day we are talking about poor network, bad roads, certain amenities that must be done by government. And government says that, look, if you do not pay the taxes, I will not be able to get more to do more. So setting up an efficient and fair tax system is, however, far from being very simple, especially in the development countries, particularly because we want to move to the international standard. Now we talk about go to China, go to USA, go to Germany. It is like this, but they pay taxes. But people also talk about how corruption alone erode the country huge sums of monies that could have been used for developmental agenda. People say Ghanaians pay tax, but government says we are not paying enough. Developing countries face these kind of challenges when they attempt to establish this efficient tax system. Now, some say that it is also very difficult to create an efficient tax administration without a well-educated and well-trained staff. When money is lacking to pay good wages to tax officials and other staff, definitely things can happen. So we want to explore. We want to think beyond reasonable doubt. Are we saying that without taxes we cannot develop? Is that the argument now? That if government cannot or will not be able to execute many projects because we are not paying enough tax. This afternoon, I read a story where the information minister was suggesting the need to raise taxes to do loads of projects. The last time he talked about how much government owe the contractors, close over 8 billion Ghana cedis. So we are saying that without taxes, we cannot develop the country. We are asking this because as well government, John Dramani Mahama, there were a lot of taxes which the opposition then, I'm talking about the MPP, termed those taxes as nuisance. And they promised to eliminate those nuisance taxes. In fact, on the issue of petrol build-up, there was a special petroleum levy that was imposed around 2015. And that was the time that around the world, the prices of fuel had gone down. The world market price had gone down. And so Ghanaians were expecting John Dramani Mahama's government to reduce the cost of fuel, because the higher the international market, they say that because the price build up were being set by the regulators and also the operators of these oil business. Definitely, once the prices at the international market had gone down, we're expecting a reduction of petroleum prices around 2015. But John Dramani Mahama's government never did that, because they had used the revenue projection for developmental project. So then the finance minister needed to come to parliament to impose a special petroleum levy that could mitigate the revenue shortfalls. Now we are made to understand that, yes, when the prices are up, we have to pay more. Now prices of petrol are up and we are paying more. But beyond that, there had been excess taxes that have been imposed on the price buildup. In fact, it is believed that close to over 40 to 50% of taxes are imposed on the price of fuel. Yes. So this president also, and I'm talking about MPP government, had promised Ghanaians of moving from taxation to production. But right now, it appears the reality is dawning on all of us that, hey, we said it, but we should be willing to pay more taxes. Tonight, Ghanaians are concerned with increasing taxes. So we want to understand how we can then refocus our economy from basically taxing to industrialization. Now I ask, are we saying without taxes we cannot develop the country? Let's get some fact checking from Eugene Osetutu. Good evening, Eugene.
Nana, good evening.
And how are you doing?
Nana, I'm fine.
Great. So what can you give us?
So Nana, basically I'm just giving you some research from the University of Michigan, also the International Trade Organization and Ghana Statistical Service about Ghana's import, figures. When it comes to 2018, our import receipt. In 2018, Ghana imported $45 million worth of footwear, chalote and other stuff. When you go to fly and starch, you also imported 115 million, and all these currencies are in dollars. When you go to raw meat, we imported 163 million of raw meat. We imported $51 million of prepared meat. We imported $109 million of carpet. We imported $195 million of sugar and confectionaries, toffees and other stuff. When you go to fish, we imported $240 million of fishes. When you go to fat and oil, we imported $286 million of fat and oil. When you go to stones, bricks and ties, I was really shocked at this figure. Stones, bricks and ties, we imported 325.
We import stones too.
Yes, for construction.
Really?
Clinker and all that, we import them.
Okay.
We imported that to the tune of $325 million. When you go to plastics, buckets and all the various plastics that are on our market, we imported $585 million of plastic. When you go to fruit, oranges, banana, grapes, apple, and on the likes, we imported $595 million. When you go to cereals, and this is the highest. When you go to cereals, rice, maize, wheat, and all that, we imported to the tune of $654 million of cereals. When you go to paper, we also imported $268 million of paper. When you go to coffee and spices, Nana, I'm shocked, we import spices, $6 million. Yes. Nana, the greatest shock was
$6 million.
Yes, of spices and coffee. Yes, and coffee. Wow. The greatest shock was duku. Hejia. We imported to the tune of $1.9 million. $1.9 million. Duku. Niama mimbo ujomunu duku. $1.9 million. Yes. Duku.
Wow.
We imported from China.
$1.9 million.
Yes. When it comes to cutlery, spoons, knife, fork, and all that, we also imported to the tune of $3 million. When it comes to beverages, $40 million. When it comes to furniture, $12 million. When it comes to soap, $11 million.
Soap?
Yes. And then this is just a few of them. There are a lot of them. These are about one of the different products, about 126 related items, and they are mainly coming from China, Vietnam, the US, and South Africa. And when you notice the trend, most of these are coming from the Asian countries. Now, someone will say, why am I quoting all these in dollars? So now, when you sum all these I've mentioned, it comes to about $3.7 billion. When you put it to our CD equivalents, about 22.6 billion cedis. And we are spending all this money to import, goods into our country. So this is the state of affairs when it comes to our import receipt.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. All right, this is Love 99.5. Experience the joy. Decision Point. My name is Nana Jantuah. So we are talking about how we can move from taxation to industrialization. And I've been joined by Mr. Gordon Newlava Samuel, Executive Director, Center for Economic and Business Research. Mr. Newlava, thank you very much for joining us on Decision Point. So IMF says in a developing country like Ghana, taxes are most critical element in developing one's country. It means that obviously before you move to the developed angle, you still need to tax more to develop more. Or you want to deviate from that assertion?
Well, Nana, good evening, and good evening to your listeners as well. I will not depart from that assertion that for you to develop, you need tax to develop. But the issue is, if you look at the sub-Saharan Africa, and for that matter, developing countries across the world, actually, tax revenue is very low, between 15% to maybe 18, maximum 20%. And that is where the government gets revenue to do everything. So we cannot develop or do any developmental projects without tax. That is not the only source of government revenue. There are other forms of government revenue, such as royalty, natural resource exploitation, like the oil that we are exploring, the cocoa that we are producing, and all that, and other government and quasi government institutions that operate. Whatever surplus revenue that is realized from there is added to the government revenue for activities. So basically, you can't do without taxation as far as developing the economy is concerned.
Let me ask you, when government says that Ghanaians are not paying taxes, I don't get it. Exactly what are they trying to tell us?
Okay. When government says Ghanaians are not paying taxes, you have to look at it from two perspectives. We have two categories of people: those who are working in the formal sector, who are paid either through the Controller and Accountant General Department for those working in the public sector, and those working in the private sector. They are supposed to be paid by their respective employers, but before they are paid, there's what we call pay as you earn tax, which is the income tax. So the income tax are deducted from those who are paid through the official channel, be it private sector or government sector. So those are the people government can easily know that for these people, they are paying their taxes. Then there's a second category, which is the non-formal sector, especially those in private sector but not formalized. Those people, they earn a lot of income and they decide to pay tax or not because probably there's not much data on them. Those doing their private selling shoes, selling their phones on daily basis, they do their things. Kinky sellers, hairdressers, tailors, beauticians, they are all there. So they form the informal sector. And in most economies in developing world, the informal sector tend to be more than the formal sector. So if the formal sector is paying the taxes, but the informal sector is not paying, whatever effort the internal revenue will put in will generate small tax revenue. That is why they will say that Ghanaians are not paying taxes. Others are paying. What it means is that there are burden on few who are paying, and the majority are not paying. That is why the tax revenue is always low. So for government to be able to raise more taxes, the focus should not be on the formal sector or those who are already paying taxes after when they get their salaries. The focus should be on the informal sector, how to rope in the majority of the informal sector into the tax bracket. And this is where I think the National Identification Authority, the Ghana card, comes in. Because according to statistics that Baumia gave us the last lecture, before the Ghana card started, only about 4% of Ghanaians had tax identification numbers. And that was so because the time that they were issuing those tax identification numbers, they were issued to those who were going to register their businesses. So if you were in the country and you did not make any attempt to register a company, you wouldn't need tax identification number. But then with the issuance of the Ghana card, it became compulsory that everybody should have tax identification number. And now it's raised from 4% to about 89%. So what it means is that the authorities, the revenue authorities, can rope in a lot more people into the tax bracket so that they can also pay tax to increase the tax base. The base is the most important thing, not the rate per se. If the rate is, let's say, 20% and only about 30% of the population are paying the taxes, you still not get enough revenue. But if the rate is, let's say, 10%, but you have about 70 to 80% of the businesses, both formal and informal in the economy, and they are paying their taxes, because the base is widened, with a little tax rate, you're able to raise enough tax revenue. So that is the effort that, for me, government and then the Internal Revenue Service should put in to make sure that the data that we are gathering, those who have been registered with the tax identification numbers, are able to be roped into the tax bracket so that they can also pay tax. By so doing, the burden will shift from only those who are working in the formal sector, who regularly pay their taxes before they even get their salary. When that happens, government will be able to raise enough revenue to do development projects.
Interesting. I know as an economics, you have your own term, what you term the optimal level of tax. That's
right.
the reasonable point at which taxes that are imposed will not deter economic activities. But
exactly.
do you feel that based on our homegrown policies, it's quite favorable for industrialization?
Well, I would say yes, it's favorable for industrialization. We have policies that are not being implemented the way it should be implemented. For instance, we have tax rebates for new setups, and recently in Parliament, they were giving tax exemptions for hotels that are being set up, and so on and so forth. The idea is to encourage more people to set up businesses in order to generate more revenue for the country as a whole, because people are going to work, they will be taxed, the employees will be taxed, the companies that is making the profit, maybe you are giving a tax holiday for 5 years or 10 years, and after that, you also start paying tax on your profit. So government will be able to get enough revenue. The problem is that it is not being implemented the way it should. For every country to be developed from agrarian to industrialization, government has effective role to play, because we have something we call risk undertaking or risk taking. Individuals may be risk averse, so they need government to push. So if government put policy incentives in place, that okay, let's say we have Exim Bank, that is going to guarantee that if you want to go into production, we are going to give you a concessionary loan, and government is going to guarantee it for you. So whatever production you want to go into, it has to have a certain quality in order to qualify for that kind of incentive. When that happens, we are going to follow it strictly. But when you have a tax policy and somebody wants to set up a manufacturing company and the person doesn't get, but somebody wants to open hotel and the person is giving tax exemption, then what motivation would a person who wants to set up a processing or production company have to set up? So we need to make sure that there's a well-defined criteria for you to be considered for tax exemption or to benefit from whatever incentive program government is putting in place, so that the right people can be targeted, and then the program will be focused to produce what we need to produce in order to generate more employment, generate more productivity, and then generate more tax revenue from those activities. So it's not a mere saying of the fact that we have tax incentive scheme in place, but how it is implemented to the benefit of those who really need those tax incentives to be able to do what they have to do.
Right. Finally, I know that you are quite busy, but hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Great. I was asking because based on the industrialization policy of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, we know how many industries that he was able to build within that short period.
Right.
Based on literature, would you prefer government adopt private-public partnership, or government must entirely stay off and just create that enabling environment for entrepreneurs?
You see, there are countries, if you read development history of China, India, South Korea, government played very active role from the initial stage. so that, government has a strong purchasing power. Unfortunately, when it comes to our part of the world, when government gets involved into any business, it doesn't end well. So for me, my advice would be that government should rather empower the private sector to work. But there should be system put in place to integrate so that the private sector will be producing, government can be the consumer. Let's take planting for food and jobs as an example, as a program that the government said, okay, I'm going to empower the private sector. So government could have private sector and then give them land, let's say 100 acres of land to one farmer. So you can have about 20 farmers in a particular area, each of them having about 100 to 150 acres of land. Government said, okay, I'm going to resource you with the inputs, fertilizers, weedicides, and everything. And at the end of the day, I'm going to buy the product, which is the cereal, the maize, or the rice. When you are looking at the fact, cereal alone import was over $600 million. So if government can say that, okay, instead of paying this $600 million to outsiders, I'm going to invest it in your businesses so that when you harvest, I buy the harvest from you. Now, that also means that government should be able to finish the one district, one warehouse that was promised, so that when they have produced the goods or the cereal or whatever it is, government is able to buy them and store and then release them as and when the need arises. Talk of maize. About a year ago, maize was costing about 120 Ghana cedis per bag. Now it's around 500. If government had incentivized people to produce more on a large scale, and government has bought them into those warehouses, and government is releasing them, the price will not fluctuate the way it is now. And people will know that I have a guaranteed market because government is using his purchasing power to support me. People will employ more people to farm, and they'll be able to produce more. And when that happens, it's going to solve unemployment situation. It's going to raise tax revenue to the government as well. And individuals in the economy will also become better off. So this is how I expect the government to come in. But not the government to come and say that I'm going to set up my own businesses and do. For instance, 3 days ago, I was hearing something like government is taking over.
Airtel to go. In fact, government has taken over finally.
And for me, I thought it didn't make sense because government had Ghana Telecom, which now is Vodafone, and messed everything up until Vodafone came in. So what business do they have now to go and acquire Airtel to go? How are they going to run it now? So for me, that is how I see things, that government should rather use the purchasing power to support the private sector instead of government himself going into those businesses.
That's interesting. So I'm going to leave you here because of the fact that you are also
I'm actually on another Zoom meeting
busy
right now.
Somewhere. So we'll connect to you some other time on this discussion, and we appreciate your time tonight.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. So, Mr. DeGraaf, Dr. Emmanuel DeGraaf Johnson also joins me, a senior lecturer, Department of Statistics, KNUST. Earlier, I was speaking to Mr. Gordon Newlove Asamoah, Executive Director, Center for Economic and Business Research. Dr. Emmanuel DeGraaf Johnson, senior lecturer, Department of Statistics. So, Doc, thank you very much once again for joining us for this very discussion.
Thank you, Nana, and good evening to our cherished listeners as well.
All right. So I'm sure you followed the discussion so far. I am handling this particular subject because one of the very reasons that Ghanaians voted for Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo in 2016 was about jobs. In fact, that experience and his focus on job creation played a large role in the defeat of President John Mahama then. So we know the gap, 53.9% to 44.4%, because Ghanaians said, look, you have not been able to create your JM, stay. So the president-elect campaign then, we know, was based on the commitment to create jobs and also to move Ghana to the forefront of industrialization efforts in West Africa. Hence, their commitment was to move us from taxation to industrialization. 5 years, how would you assess it? Do you think that politicians really understand the industrialization drive beyond the talks?
Nana, one of the most important things that we have to consider always is that if you check across Africa, our leaders are still governing 21st century that we are with techniques of the 20th century. That has been the bone of our problems, and that is the reason why we still keep on asking ourselves these questions. One of the things that I would like to talk before I come to this very particular question was that we normally seems to allow the politicians to have a leeway and to define some of the things for us to follow, which in actual real world is not realistic. One of the jargons that they were using, and my colleagues also just mentioned it right now, is that we have a small tax net. Because of that, we are not able to gather enough revenue within the country and then to help us build the development agenda that we want. Now, let's put it first. That analogy is false. We should not anywhere try to cover our inefficiencies using this kind of jargons and then try as much as possible to shift the blame into our inability to cover that. And that one aspect is just income tax. It's just the income tax that we don't have enough cover within the country. And that is the reason why it has led to increases in direct taxes such as the import duty taxes. Because we are unable to cover this, we have excesses in the other sector that allows everybody to pay directly to that. Example, look at the margins that we have on petroleum products alone that you talked about. The margins alone that we have, that has been increased. It is not as a result of increase in the world market. No, that is not the issue. It's as a result of government increasing the margin of operation of activities of some of the state agencies due to the inefficiencies. For instance, we have energy debt recovery levy, road fund levy, energy fund levy, price stabilization recovery levy, sanitation and pollution levy, energy sector recovery, so much of them, market margin, fuel market margin, and so on and so forth. These are the taxes we put on petroleum so that the ordinary person who doesn't pay income tax pay these taxes because he takes car or he takes this and so on and so forth, so that these taxes goes back to government. That's the reason why we still have about 20% luxury tax on sanitary parts. That's the reason why our 12.5 VAT has been recalculated. So normally we say that it's 12.5, but that is not the issue. Because previously, if you want to calculate your 17.5, what you need to do is that you sum up and then you calculate the percentage of it. Now it's not like that. You sum up, you calculate your 12.5, and then you get a new total before you add your 5% and get another total, which increases the tax that you pay, even though the percentage still remains. But the calculation aspect has been changed. So we've increased taxes in all spheres, directly and indirectly, to make up for our inefficiency in the income tax category. So if you broaden that net of the income tax category, then you should go to the other side and then release some of the taxes out there. So you cannot hold on to one point, charging all sort of taxes at that hand, and then come to other point and complain. It doesn't work that way. That's not the practicality. It doesn't happen anywhere in the world. So that's one thing that we should put across whenever they come out with that particular jargon, and then we have to point it to them that that's the reason why taxation is also very high in import duty. Ghana is among one of the highest import duty in our sub-region, and even in Africa as a whole, and even in the world, because we pay so much higher in taxes. You know, whenever you compare, sometimes the taxes alone is more than 100% of the actual tax you're supposed to pay on the thing that is imported. These are the critical issues that you have to talk about. The other question is that there's a question of believability whenever you promise of jobs, right? Believability. How do people believe you in the language that you're putting out? I had opportunity to partake in a lot of the polls for this 2020 and then 2016 election as well. And then you can measure that when you talk of the creation of jobs, the belief of the people were low because they don't believe. And some of the things that they put out across is that the people promising us, how many have they promised in their private life? How many jobs have they created for the people in their private sector? So if these people who have not created jobs before, who have no knowledge about job creation, and now hook on into become a government and now promise to create jobs, the believability will always be low. Because, Nana, if we give you $2 million and then we tell you to create job, which is maybe in tourism sector or whatever sector that you want to, it is not because you have the money. So you go and open the shops and so on and so forth, and the job will be sustainable. It will collapse because you need the requisite skills in order to make sure that the jobs that you said you are going to create will be beneficial enough. And one of the things that has been our problem has been the issue of politicization of job creation. Instead of it to become a national developmental policy, it rather becomes a political tool policy. And once it becomes a political tool policy, then we tend to make it populist instead of making it something standardized so that we can build upon it for future to come. We don't do that. One of the problems also that you've seen is that worldwide studies that we've covered under trade, industry, and so on and so forth, when you give money to establish companies for expansion, if it doesn't come to the condition, then the companies tend to use such money for automation instead of an expansion to take in more people. So that's what happens. There's an established company. Government wants to do the established company, $100 million. If it doesn't come with any conditions, what the company will do is that it will expand, but it will automate the process. So it will not end up taking the number of people that we hope it will take. Remember, in this industrialization in the 21st century, it is not the one that we used to have in the 19th and the 20th century, where you need a lot of hands to be on board, right? That is not the case.
Interesting.
Now you need highly skilled individuals to mine the automation processes that we have. So and what is supposed to be done by 50 people can now be done by only one, but the person has expanded it. That is the problem that we have here. But because we've not been able to make sure that we put on the required policies to help us to expand in terms of industrialization,
right?
Government upon government will come and go, and we still be mixing the point.
Okay, so hold on and let me connect Evans Nunu, who is a business consultant and an economist, to join in the discussion. Mr. Nunu, thank you very much. This is Decision Point. So, according to IMF, they say that developing countries will need to reduce sharply their reliance on foreign trade taxes, going for loans, grants, etc., without at the same time creating economic disincentives, especially in raising more revenue from income tax. Now, they propose these, and when you read further, they say to meet these challenges, policymakers in these countries would have to get their policy priorities right and have the political will to implement the necessary reform. The necessary reform. It talks about tax administration must be strengthened to accompany the needed policy changes. As an economist, I know how relevant taxes are. But in a developing country like this, are we saying without taxes, we cannot develop this country?
All right, thank you for having me, and a very good evening to our cherished listeners, and a very big one to Doctor on the other side of the line. All right, so most definitely, taxes happen to be the blood of every economy. So without them, virtually the economy will come to a halt. But I'm sure your interest has been in over-reliance on taxes, especially when the tax bracket is that small, given our case. Let me say that this, in addition to what Doc was saying, I just want to draw attention to the fact that we are also having to suffer from non-payment of corporate taxes, and that is more important. It is more important because in our setup, you would realize that there is huge inequality. And so whilst advanced countries are striving towards egalitarianism, we, those of us in Africa, especially West Africa, we are still recording high inequality. So you will see people running their own economics big time, and others would have to struggle to make a meal a day. It means that those people are having profits that could pay 100 times the employees they employ. So if these people are not paying corporate taxes, then there is a problem. Let's also remember the fact that there are artisans, masons, carpenters, and the rest who have firms unregistered. They earn profits and they don't pay taxes on those profits. So quite apart from the fact that employees might not be paying income taxes and the rest, what we should also be mindful of is that corporate taxes are woefully inadequate, especially given the fact that whatever few taxpayers in the system will be paying would be used by everybody else. So if those few people who are paying taxes are using that money to construct roads, those who are not paying taxes would also use the road, and very soon the road will start depleting. So it's a duty for all of us to make sure that we are broadening the tax bracket, and we are also making sure that we are not over-relying on taxes by making sure that the economy is industrialized and the government is engaging strategically in some of these activities, industrial activities. For example, Ghana Commercial Bank is partly owned by the government, but you would agree with me that it is doing so well. And if that is the case, whatever profit they record, the government would have its fair share. Can we do that for others, for other industries? These are the things we need to be thinking about. But I also do not think that the government should be picking it up by itself to be running and managing firms directly, because over the years, it has not proven to be fruitful. And so we should be strategic in that sense. But you see, your preamble raises concern. Let me say that all these things we are discussing would have to be buried in good strategies, formulation of good policies, and strategic implementation of those policies. But let me give you a few background, or a very short background for that matter. Listen to some excerpts from the last budget we read as a people. Now, free SHS had 952.6 million Ghana cedis. Another thing that is quite fascinating is that school feeding program had 488.8 million. Now, come to think of it, school feeding program had 488.8 million. But one district, one factory, which is supposed to be the engine for our industrialization drive, had 164.3 million. I hope you are getting the drift.
Yeah.
School feeding program had 488.8 million. One district, one factory had 164.3 million. And then a very important institution that would help us a lot in our quest to achieve industrialization, Maslock had as scanty as 48 million. But ask yourself, a poor country that seeks industrialization, you are using 488.8 million to feed people, and you devote 48 million for Maslock that is supposed to grant loans to listen to the mission and vision of Maslock. The reason why we set up Maslock, to provide micro and small loans for startups and small businesses with fast, easy, and accessible microcredit and small loans to grow. It tells you that Maslow has a very good role, a very important role to play in our quest to industrialize. But we gave them 48 million Ghana cedis. And come to think of it, how we see we have to redirect our expenditure. Look at this funny thing. Look at this very funny thing. Come to think of how much did we spend on teacher training allowances and nursing training allowances. Teacher training allowance had 169.9 million, and nursing training allowance had 231.2 million. 230. So we are paying students in the nursing training colleges, and the totality of that is higher than how much we are devoting for Maslow, and we are devoting into one desert, one factory. So your preamble suggests that we should formulate policies, and our policymakers should be willing and should have the heart to implement it. We feel like industrializing, but we don't hope to industrialize practically, because if you look at our expenditure pattern, nothing suggests that we really hope to industrialize. And if we don't redirect our expenditure, we will make noise about it. As technocrats, economists, we will sing beautiful songs, but those who are supposed to dance to the songs will be dancing to different songs. And that is the problem we have. So we really need to redirect our expenditure.
But what is the difficulty? Because, I mean, it does appear, for example, the policymakers in opposition, they say lots of things that will make us believe that given the opportunity, they will be able to make things better. And then in reality, when we begin to question them, it becomes a challenge. With all the fine brains, with all the exposure, the learning, you are the economics, you are learning virtually everything, how we can make this country better. At least there's a literature review in there, because we had a certain president called Dr. Kwame Nkrumah who was able to do something. There are records in there, and it has been feasible. China had their industrialization policy. Now everybody is moving towards China. So even you do not need to struggle like the older days. So why is it so difficult for us to implement this all-important policy?
Yes. The reality is that politicians are very much aware that we have high illiteracy rate, and to some extent, there is a higher level of ignorance, and they are playing on that. The thing is, they are looking for cheap votes. If you opt to put up companies, factories, probably by way of one district, one factory, and you want to start from scratch, you want to start from scratch, it means that you may have to pump in money. Sometimes you would not even finish, and there will be change in government. That will not go to your credit. And so for you to get quick vote, then you have to provide what might not yield the right effect in the future, but will get you vote immediately. There's something we call time inconsistency. You see, when you are in opposition or when you are outside government, you have this nice mental picture. Sometimes, at a point in our various lives, we've been drawn into such fantasies before. Sometimes you'll be there alone as a child, and you feel like when you grow, you'll be driving that new Mercedes-Benz, and you'll be married to a white woman, and you'll be playing on some island in the sky somewhere. You know, those fantasies are there, and politicians are sometimes drawn into it. When they are outside government or they are in opposition, they say nice things, only for them to get power, and they begin to think of how they can sustain that power by providing things that will get them vote immediately, but will not give it the right effect in the long future. So mostly in economics, we talk of long term and short run and long run. The politician mostly thinks of the long run effect of most of their policies, because they know that they have 4 years and probably another 4 years, and they have to be fast. But if you really want to help this nation, then you need to be thinking of things that will help us in the future. You have to build, and someone will have to come and build on, and another will build on, and then Rome was not built in a day. That concept must sink deep down into our heads. But our politicians have totally and blatantly rejected that. And that is why we are where we are. So if we really want to industrialize, we should not play. Let's not forget. Are you aware that in 2004, this visionary man, President Kufuor, set up Ghana Venture Capital Trust Fund? And I tell you, Ghana Venture Capital Trust Fund is supposed to provide the venture capital needs of Ghana, so that you and I, if we really want to start up a business, and we have that nice business proposal, but we don't have anywhere to turn to for finance or for funds, we can go to that office for support. Tell me, how much have we heard from that fund? Ghana Venture Capital Trust Fund is almost non-existent. We don't hear about them. But that is a very important machinery to help us achieve industrialization. So, Nana, our politicians must not play with policies that hover around industrialization, such as one district, one factory. It is the single most important policy that would get us on that industrialization track road. And we should do nothing to jeopardize that. So going forward, my recommendation is that the government must put in place proper machinery and must put in more funds to make sure that we are doing the right thing with that policy of one district, one factory.
All right, hold on. Dr. De Graaf, so Mr. Evans Nunu is talking about the government must do more to pump more funds. As we speak, government of the day talks about the COVID that came in and nobody had planned that. So some of the projections had failed and the economy is rebounding and they are trying to find means to mitigate the challenges. Because of that, clearly, government needs more to do more. As we speak, government is looking at raising more funds. In reality, government would have to source internal revenue by taxing us, by expanding the tax net in order to get people whatever they are putting the government or the government of the day, the kind of pressure that they give them. Because every day in the morning or in the evening, you find people talking about bad roads, lack of street lights, and the likes. But I know you have also had certain experience in the developed world. What is it that they were able to do to the extent that even at the time of COVID-19, government of the day in those developed countries are able to give them tax incentives that we have not been able to do whilst we boast of all these natural resources at our disposal?
Nana, all what we are facing right now, I will just attribute up to 10% to COVID. The 90% I will attribute to how the economy has been managed pre-COVID. Because you can't tell me that within a space of six months, for an economy that we were told to be very robust, right, that can resist external shocks for up to 6 months. That was the statement of the finance minister. Cannot withstand a close down of very, say, 8 weeks. Then we have a problem. Because that was not the picture that was given to us. Moreover, we can always compare ourselves to our neighboring countries. You have Cote d'Ivoire, you have Togo, you have Benin, you have Nigeria, you have Mali, you have Burkina Faso, Sierra Leone is there, Gambia is there. You all have these countries, Senegal, they are all there. Why are they not experiencing what we are experiencing? Did we get a different type of COVID? What at all really happened? Because over there, there's a practicality and sense of what is at stake. You cannot tell me that we are suffering, we need more money, and the president is hiring private jets that cost a stream. We are not saying you should not hire, of course, but we have different levels that you could have had, but you always go for the stream. So how can we justify that one to the ordinary person on the street of Kegetia selling tomatoes and telling that he needs to pay more because of COVID, this and that and that and that and that. First of all, he's not been told how much COVID money was spent. Actually, all the money that we got from IMF or the rebates and all the other money pumped into it, we don't know how much it has been spent. There has been no accountability to us. We've been hearing hints of how much was spent, but in totality, as we speak, we don't have. The Auditor General did not finish auditing that before he left office, and the new one has not continued. So our rhetoric and our behavior should be able to coincide so that we, the people, citizens, can believe in what is going on and that we can sympathize with what is going on. Now, the question is, what really has changed within 2-3 years that has brought us up to this mess? That right now we're talking of trying to add up. The quotation that you made from KWADWO today, but as you reported in the graphic, suggests that we should brace up for more tariffs or for more taxes in the budget that the finance minister is yet to read. As my colleague said, we can focus on industrialization based on the policies and the things that we put in place. If you look at the statistics and the figures that he has just churned out, indicating where our priorities are, it tells me that our priorities have not been a deliberate effort for us to industrialize and make sure that we bring in more revenue. Because one of the very most important things is this. When a company is set up and then there's a caveat or there's a condition to the company, when the company employs people, the people pay more income tax to the government. So you generate more tax. So it becomes a trickle-down effect, right, where we have the masses over the down, all benefiting from what is from up to down. But if there's no conditions to that, what happens is that the automation will happen and the taxes that are supposed to be paid will be only few people. This government in particular has a lot to do because it's promised so much, it has delivered, but we haven't seen much. So that is the question that people are asking. And then the government has to make it in such a way that we, the people, will be able to see the true nature of what is happening so that we can sympathize with it and we can all come together and say that let's solve this particular problem. But if the appointees of the government are behaving differently, lavishly, and then trying all sort of power display and so on and so forth, and on the other hand, you have the masses who are supposed to pay taxes, and then you tell them that we have to brace up and then contribute more. The question you ask yourself is that, do the executives pay taxes? Do they pay so? They're supposed to pay. So I'm expecting that you lead, for example, that there will be a ratification, as the president said that they are not going to take the increment that has been given to them in their salary. That I was expecting that they come out to say that we are now going to tax ourselves. Therefore, if we are taxing ourselves, the masses should also be taxed. Because if somebody is selling tomatoes for KWADWO and is not paying income tax, what problem should I have with him? Because the executives are not paying. Those people who are supposed to make sure that we go by the letter and make sure that we implement all the policies are outside the policy itself. So how can I have the moral right to tell the one who is at the base of the economy to pay the taxes that you are the one who is at the top, you are not doing yourself? So we should be able to do. Then another thing is that there should be a national consensus on what we intend to do. Every country that has developed does not leave its particular or most priority issues into the international sphere. For instance, in Ghana, whenever we are quoting anything, we say figures from IMF, we say figures from United Nations. We've never said figures from government of Ghana. Why so? Don't they have the data, or is it because we don't trust them? It's because that government has been a one-sided link that if you are not a party member or not in the government, you do not have access to those particular information, and you don't feel part to be in the governance structure.
That's interesting.
If you look at China, China plays by its own rules. because our theory and history has taught us that all the countries that develop and they are developing play by their own rules. We are quick to say IMF says this, IMF says that, IMF says this. The point is that can we show one particular country that IMF policies have helped to develop? The answer is no. You have a critical example in Greece only a few years ago that the prescription IMF gave to them, they couldn't take it. That is an European country. They rejected it outright. It leads to the prime minister to resign. Another prime minister came, there was vote of no confidence, and so there were daily demonstrations, nothing. Why? Because the prescription that IMF has been giving to Africa was given to them, and they said no, because it doesn't help for them to develop. These are the things that we do. So we need a homegrown policy. We have the people in Ghana. We have the brains in Ghana. And as some people say, we have the men in Ghana that be able to harness all of this in a bipartisan way. You'll be able to bring up a clear policy that the government can commit itself into it, and it will help us, this country, to make sure that we create enough employment, and that will automatically increase the tax income base for us to generate more revenue and help us in the developmental strategies.
That's
if
interesting.
Not, for what we are doing right now, I'm afraid we won't go far.
Thank you, Dr. De Graaf, for your input tonight. I'm going to end with you, Mr. Nunu. I am. Well, I'm quite worried. Is Mr. Nunu on the line? Hello? Okay. So this is Decision Point. We will try to raise Mr. Nunu on the line so we can speak to him and then we can finalize. Then you also join us. Tonight, our topic is on how we can refocus the economy from taxation to industrialization. Let's play our editorial, and then when we come back, we'll allow Mr. Nunu to wrap up for us. This is Decision Point on Love 99.5. Our editorial. And then when we come back,
on the topic of refocusing the economy from taxation to industrialization, a simple definition for industrialization is that it is the process by which an economy moves from primary production to mass-produced and technologically advanced goods and services, while taxation is the imposition of levies on goods and services for revenue generation. Now, we can all attest to the fact that industrialization and taxation are strong pillars that will help drive economic growth in the country. The Akufo-Addo administration during the 2016 electioneering campaign promised to move Ghana's economy from taxation to production. They highlighted some interesting points on the ways they could generate other sources of revenue in the quest to achieve this feat, and I will be highlighting some of them. In their 2016 manifesto, the NPP explained that the deliberate plan to shift the focus of economic policy from taxation to production will be by 1. Reducing government expenditure as a result of increased collaboration with the private sector and prioritization of the private sector. 2. Savings from the reduction of interest rates paid on the country's debt stock. 3. Increase in oil and gas revenues from TEN and Sankofa fields. 4. Plugging leakages in the administration of public finances. And the last one is to eliminate corruption in procurement of goods and services, and some other alternative solutions that was mentioned in the 2016 manifesto. The question now to the ruling party and to my fellow Ghanaians is that, has this promise been fulfilled through these alternative solutions? Well, I will urge managers of the economy that it is high time they tell voters the truth during campaign periods and stop the politicking with petty lies that affect citizens after elections.
Thank you very much, Irene Puma, with the editorial for tonight. This is Decision Point. Mr. Nunu is an economist and a business consultant. So, sir, what do we do? Because they know, the politicians know, we know, they tell us, but they are not doing it, and they burden us with more tax. Next week, there will be a budget reading, and I am sure that it is about finding other ways to raise revenue, which means more taxes. What do we do so that at least the ordinary Ghanaian can breathe for once?
All right, thank you so much. So, first of all, I would recommend that we deepen the concept of tax clearance. You know, there is this system where, for example, if you are looking for a building permit, you'll be requested to provide tax clearance certificate. And that would demand that you declare your sources of income, that building you want to put up. Where did you get those monies you want to use to put up that building? If you declare your sources of income, then they would attempt to assess if you've been paying your taxes. If you don't pay tax, they will ask you to go back and pay and get a tax clearance certificate before you be given the permit. If this should run in all other areas, if you are seeking to get a driver's license, where did you get the car? Where did you get the money to buy the car? Or you want to license your car, get roadworthy. How did you buy the car? From where? You declare your sources of income. You are made to bring to bear your tax clearance certificate. Then you are good to go. Another thing I would advise or recommend is that the government, by any means possible, would have to reduce domestic borrowing for now. Because, Nana, between January and June, the government borrowed as much as 7.1 billion from the domestic market. If you do that as a government, you only end up competing with the private sector over the little amount of funds that they could use to expand, or new business entrepreneurs could use to start up. And so the government should, as much as possible, reduce how much it is borrowing from the domestic government. That will crowd out the private sector. But the private sector has a role to play in our quest to industrialize. So I think the government would have to look at that again and again. And as we are putting up firms, we are putting up young industries. In our quest to, fill various vacancies, we should try as much as possible to reduce the number of protocols. Because almost like if the government is recruiting, if the government has to recruit 1,000 people, about 80% of that protocol. If you don't have any political affiliation, you are not brought on board. But people who are decent in their thinking, people who are noble, normally wouldn't want to be going to people they know before they get recruited. Those people would want to go through the system naturally. And those are the competent people, those are the honest people we need to manage our various firms and our various industries. So we should reduce how much politics we read into these things. Nepotism and cronyism and all of that must be eliminated. Then we'll be good to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Evans Nunu, for your input tonight. This is Decision Point on Love 99.5. So, based on the conversations we've had so far, from Mr. New Love to Dr. De Graft to Mr. Evans Nunu, what do you think? What will be your decision? Do you ever think that government can do without taxes, reduce the taxes and use other means? Or as we speak, as of now, it will be very difficult for government to adopt that strategy? Because every day we are on government. But how do we expect government to provide all these infrastructures and developmental agendas when they are not taxing? Or you feel that there could be another innovative ways where taxes will be reduced, but development will still be ongoing? Share with me now. The lines are active. Call me and let's talk. Decision Point 03220 83596 03220 83597 and 03220 83598 03220 83596 83597 and 03220 835 98. Hello, good evening.
Good evening, Nana One.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, my name is Political Kinka, calling from Achimako Police.
Okay, please make your point, decision point.
Yeah, I think you are very wrong, and you know your panelists too have spoke a lot, you know, and their speaking is centered on humanity, you know, because you and I, we are living witness to the so-called NDC and MPP. You know, their missions and their visions are self-centeredness. Okay? So now, what we think that we can do to save this mother Ghana is to, you know, bring out our own citizen manifesto that this is the manifesto that move Ghana forward. And then we go and consult the smaller parties so that we can come together as one and fight against this criminal.
No, hold on. Hold on.
Okay, because these two parties are causing harm to Mother Ghana. They don't think about, you know, the citizens. You know, the leadership is about, you know, greediness, parochial interest. Charlie, we have to stand up high and fight.
Okay, thank you. Want to pick Timothy. Good evening, Timothy.
Nana, good evening.
Yes, Timothy, decision point.
Yeah, Nana, I agree with your people, the people you spoke with. I think we should have innovative way of taking money. In most cases, there are a lot of people who are paying tax, but the money does not go directly to the government. Let me give you an instance. Just during the COVID, I went back to my hometown in the Western region. And when I went there, my father ran this store, provision and other stuff. So I saw this tax being pasted at the store. So I asked, the whole of this cost, is this how much you paid? Then he said, no. If you give these people 100 cedis, they are going to actually write 40 cedis and paste it over there. So what is happening? It means the average Ghanaian is paying more than what the government is earning. So the remaining 60% of that amount is going into people's pocket. So there should be more innovative way of taking the money from the very people who pay the money, so that the government will not increase it for the citizenry to suffer, but rather whatever is paid will go directly to the government. Thank you.
Thank you. George, good evening. Hello, George.
Hello, good evening.
Yes, you are there, George. Decision point.
Thank you. My brother, if government reduce the taxes, where is government going to get money to run this nation? You see, government is lazy. Government have nothing to get money from. Government don't produce. Government don't export. So what is government only depend on borrowing and taxes. That's all. So I don't think this government can reduce taxes. If this government reduce taxes, this country cannot be run, because we are having a lazy government who is doing nothing, no production. We don't produce and export. We are exporting. So how can government reduce taxes? Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Wonder, good evening.
Good evening, my brother. How are you?
I am fine. Decision point.
Let me make my decision. But first of all, let me say good evening to lawyer Evans Amankwa. The incoming chairman. My brother, there is no country in this world that can develop without taxation. But let's ask ourselves, is our tax meaningful? Since we are paying tax to this government, what does the government using our tax for? But you know something? Tax are very important, but some tax are meaningless. Something like water tax, and then the numbers of that level on our petroleum side, some of them can remove and it will be successful. But when we are paying the tax to this government, there is nothing can show to us that our tax benefit is this. Meanwhile, this government is collecting our tax at the same time borrowing. And if you borrow, you must use the tax, you must use the borrowing money and do something so that it will pay itself. But nothing. If you use borrowing money or tax money and pay school, we know that when we pay school fees and the others, we can use the borrowing. Or if you use the money and market, there will be ticket buying and other things and used to pay the borrowing or the taxation. But this government, nothing. You use the money and then buy on air. You go and back and come back.
All right. Nothing. Thank you, Steve Wonders. Thank you. I have Paul on the line. Paul, good evening.
Yeah, good evening, sir.
You're on a decision point.
Yeah, I want your first checker to cross-check within the West Africa or the whole Africa the price of liter of petrol. For instance, a price of liter of petrol in Togo is about 5.5 French francs divided by 110. In Benin, the same thing. They are not oil producing country. In Nigeria, it's about 1.72 per liter. That's 168 naira per liter. There's a lot of subsidy. If you go to Cameroon, their producing oil is about 4.80 per liter. If you go to Gabon, it's about 4.50 a liter. It's oil producing. I don't know about Angola and other countries. If you go to Equatorial Guinea, they use, I don't know how they use their currency. So what I'm saying is that formerly, early 2000, Togolese used to come and buy fuel in Nigeria and smuggle it. When you are going through the border, Segbe border or Flower border, you see Ghana Army searching the vehicle to know whether people are smuggling petrol to Togo. But today, the reverse. People are going to Togo to buy fuel who don't have oil. So the leaders should think twice.
All right, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Owusu from Ahafo region. Owusu, can you hear me? Okay. 03220-83597, 83596. Yes, good evening.
Yeah, good evening, Nana.
Your name, please.
Yeah, my name is Samuel. I'm calling from Santata.
Samuel Santata, decision point.
Yes, Nana, in as much as I agree that a country cannot develop without taxes because it is the main source of government revenue. However, what I have realized is that Ghana, instead of widening the tax gap and so that it can cover a lot of people, they rather increase it and burden it on the few people. And, you know, they target goods which the economists will say have inelastic demand, knowing very well that whatever be the case, people continue to demand these commodities. And a typical example is petrol. So they target those commodities and keep on increasing the taxes on those commodities. And that is the main cause. If they can widen the tax gap so that there are a lot of people who are not paying taxes, yet they are making an income. And the expenditure to there is wastage, a lot of wastage in the government. You know, people, if you look at the election year, the kind of money that went into unnecessary things just because of election, at the end of the day, it will come back to harm you, and you will not have any alternative but to increase taxes in order to cover those.
Thank you. Thank you, Usu. So we'll end with Ayite from Bosumche. Ayite, you are our final caller. Hello, Ayite.
All right. Yeah, boss.
Yes, you're on there. Please be snappy.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. We're having a very poor network here. Now, let me explain the things of Asafoji and the numbers of the NDC. We need to admit the fact that NPP-led, Nanado-led government rather lied to us that they are going to move the country from taxation to production. Now it has become a fiasco, a total propaganda, and we should let the citizens or the electors be aware that there's no way we can develop this country without paying taxes. That is a fact. And secondly, the taxes should be judiciously used, because if I pay tax and it is meant for maybe building a bridge or constructing road, and I don't see anything of such sort, do you think it would ginger me to keep paying the taxes? The opulent lifestyle of politicians is somehow irritating with the voters. You know, government mere communicators. In the next 2 years, 3 years, you see them in luxurious vehicles or cars, where we know them from the scratch that they have nothing.
Thank you.
Unless they put themselves into our shoes and live the same living condition as we are, else it will detail or it will discourage some of us to keep paying taxes to the government.
Thank you very much Kingsley. Okay, quick one. Kingsley, quick one, please. Good evening.
Yeah, good evening.
Yeah, quick one, 10 seconds.
Yeah, congratulations for such a great. You know, we need that to let us know what is going on. Because, you know, things are going on our hands. Besides, one thing about this government, the last thing.
I'm afraid your network is poor, so we have to cut it. But remember, right after the show, the hook is on, and fantastically, you know that MC Bali and DJ Ima Black, powerful man, you know, they bring the youngness in us. So if you're a professor or a doctor or whoever is listening, look, you need to relax with powerful music, you know. Sometimes we are too formal. Let's get some informal, you know, stuff in us, and let's chill, let's relax with MC Bali and DJ Ima Black. I enjoy them. I hope you would also enjoy them. Look, thank you. Enjoy these guys. They are wonderful. They make our night great on Love 99.5. Experience the joy. I want to thank my production team, Eugene Oseju, to thank you, and Joel, thank you, and to my executive producer, DJ Apuzo. My name is Nana Jantua. Good evening, and have a great day. The hook is up next.